I guess we're in the home stretch. Thank you for everybody who made it so far. I'm between, I guess I'm competing with free coffee, so I should have offered free coffee. You already got free books. And I missed the memo to wear black, I said earlier, so I'm sticking out like a sore thumb being in green today. So today I want to talk a little bit around what we have learned going through our own AI journey, but also what we see happening with a lot of our customers, partners in the industry around AI and around successful patterns, how to adopt AI in your own company and for your own use cases. My name is Mark Holzer. I'm what is called a distinguished engineer at Red Hat, which means we look at like our overall overarching portfolio product strategy. I also lead our global executive briefing program, and I do a lot of work in emerging technology. And Red Hat, they always say jokingly, I breed pandas. In Red Hat, once they can walk on their own, we give them to engineering, and they build proper products out of it. But it's an exciting time. You heard a lot about AI today. And one thing for you, you heard a lot, so don't do this right now, but it really works. You get a lot of interesting insights about yourself. Do it with all the chatbots you use. It will tell you a lot who you are and who you might not even know who you are. But we also will walk through a couple of realities, what we see today happening. And as I said earlier in the conversation, those are just the headlines from last week. They're already superseded by other headlines we've seen this week. However, those are clearly some very eye-catching headlines. You need to understand the finer details, take them with a grain of salt, especially like, oh, the sky is falling, 80+% of AI pilots are failing. Not really true. When you look under the hood, there are some very foundational elements which are missing, how you get into production, how you make it scale. But there are certainly some challenges, some risks. The IBM Business Value Institute actually has just done a research study, which is really interesting to download, who interviewed 2,000 CEOs. And there's a lot of really interesting insights in there, really helpful for a lot of people to sort of think about their AI journey, think about the challenges they face. But there are also some real risks out there, like you probably have all seen the article about the consulting company who used a little bit too much in AI in their reports, and that's not an outlier. And that kind of has now coined this term you probably have seen also called work slop, which is really a challenge where a lot of people might just pump out a lot of AI content or AI-generated content. First of all, it's not authentic in many cases. It might often also not be real. And it is also tiring to a lot of people and really discredits the use cases for AI. So I think we need to be really mindful about this and not just blindly run ChatGPT like Ethan walked you through earlier today. Don't just use it, send the output to everybody, usually doesn't help. And here are some real examples on, there's also dangers involved. I mean, some of you might remember the famous part in Gemini when a user asked, how can I avoid cheese sliding off my pizza, and Gemini suggested use glue. Probably not recommended by about 15 health-conscious doctors, but again, validate the output. The Amazon example is also real, that the majority of mushroom foraging books are actually AI written, which is in itself concerning, but then you use the apps you use for mushroom foraging, they actually have a failure rate of 60%. Which probably tells me guessing is a better strategy when you look for non-poisonous mushrooms than the app. But maybe that's the way of how AI is trying to figure out what to do with all of us. The other really interesting part here is Amazon was actually forced to impose a limit on how many books you can publish per day, because they had people who tried to publish up to 200 books a day. Any of you who has written a book, you're lucky if you write a book a year. Right now, the limit is 3 books a day. So again, just shows you, there are some real crazy things out there. But really, there is a lot of opportunity here around AI. And it also has brought out, of course, the old discussion, what is the fastest thing on Earth? Clearly, cheetah at some point was the fastest animal out there. Then you, for example, had the airplane, or speed of light. But we have a whole new species which is even faster than speed of light. And pick your favorite term from the last 2 or 3 years, who remembers crypto? Nobody probably. Who remembers blockchain? Nobody. NFT is so yesterday. Now, of course, you have everybody's an AI expert on LinkedIn and elsewhere. And for those of you who are in technology, you love to see experts claiming they're an expert in the field for the last 15 years, if the technology may only be around for 5. Good example in our world is Kubernetes, container platform, where we have plenty of people who claimed, I'm doing this for 20 years. Again, be mindful, really, be real about some of the capabilities and understand also what people claim, what they actually do. However, we all have seen major technology transitions in our life. I still vividly remember containers for cloud-native applications where we all said, we've got 2 years' time to get this into production. It took about 6 months. Now with Gen AI, we have not even reached peak yet. And it's like rapid fire. It's like every week there's something new. So it's much, much harder to even articulate and build a lasting strategy because your world literally gets turned upside down on almost a weekly, if not bi-weekly basis. The other thing I would have loved to do, and I tried to figure it out on how much was actually spent on transformation each of those phases. I figure with Gen AI, we probably wouldn't have enough zeros to fit on the slide at this point. But clearly, there is something to it, and we are really just at the beginning of this transition. So there is going to be a lot of things happening. You heard this throughout the day. Models evolve so fast, so rapidly. A lot of things you thought were super important over the last couple of months, like prompt engineering or whatever. That's all going to be for naught in a sense of some of us remember, hey, we need to use like instruction tuning for models or really focus on RAG. All these things get commoditized at rapid pace. So that's something we need to also keep in mind as we look at AI. And some people say, well, generative AI is a whole new industry. That's really not true. It's just a different way of thinking, how you look at your challenges, how you solve the challenges, especially in the context of today, how you broaden your horizon and open up the lens in terms of where, for example, can you actually bring now teams together which formerly never could be brought together for collaboration. Like I'm personally super excited about the announcement around flows, sidekicks, MCP. We love technology, but I think it is a super unique opportunity to suddenly have like engineering teams, marketing, creative people all on a single canvas who formerly barely talk to each other, probably. And ironically enough, some of these people may have awesome ideas in different people's space. An engineer might have an awesome marketing idea. A marketer might have an awesome idea around the UI, for example. Now suddenly get empowered to actually build these things. So really, really impactful. Again, this has been hammered home, I feel, ad nauseum today, that don't ignore it. And I always say it's like almost, the companies, when the internet became a thing, they said, oh, it's too scary. Yeah, we are going to ignore it. They're probably not around anymore. And really, like the lady from BCG said, this is like our electricity moment, where basically it's not good enough to just swap out some gas lamps with bulbs. That doesn't bring you a whole lot, but really you're looking at redoing your entire production line and really put in electrical machines for your processes. So it will have fundamental impact in many, many areas, and don't ignore it, really lean into this. And why would you experiment with AI, and what are some patterns we see happening throughout sort of our journey here? One is, encourage people, has also been mentioned many times, encourage people to experiment and empower people to experiment, but provide guardrails. It's not good enough just to throw like all the URLs for your favorite chatbot out there, give them all the coding tools, probably doesn't lead to a whole lot except a lot of technical depth or a lot of frustration down the road when they just can't move it into production, for example. Also, make sure you bring people along. I think this has been mentioned many times today as well. Really, culture is super important. Bring the people along who are doubters, who might be belittle AI, and also the people who feel they are left out. There's a real danger we see happen in our own space, that some people feel, oh, I'm not part of the cool kids who get to do AI. I need to do this stuff over there. But encourage them to look at their opportunities to apply AI even to things they haven't thought about. And I have this, even on my own team, I have people, I don't know how to use AI, and it's there are some super easy use cases, and interacting with AI, using AI can have a lot of value to drive your overall development, and then really look at what are some broader use cases to, for example, enable. But always keep in mind, successful pilots also start with identifying real ROI. What are the outcomes, rather than like, oh, we do a test balloon and see what it happens. That usually doesn't go very far. It's fun, but it really doesn't move the needle. So what are some sort of there we go. What are some of the recipes we put together in terms of how you start building out sort of your AI use cases? One is like, identify use cases, but make them tangible and also achievable. When you know you are missing certain foundational elements, there's no point in solving this use case. You're just going to bang your head against the wall, run into problems. It will just stale and eventually fizzle out and die. But really identify tangible use cases. Skills. Super important, of course, but to be honest, in many cases, you don't need to be like a data scientist or machine learning engineer or whatever. You can do a lot of it already yourself. Ethan showed us today, you can use zero knowledge. You can actually start building prototypes. You can create really interesting use cases out of just thinking about it and interacting naturally with language models. However, if you need skills and you don't have them, there's no shame in borrowing talent. There's plenty of people out there who are more than skilled to help you, being at consulting companies, partners, etc. So obviously a huge opportunity also to supplement your skills and then learn as you go along and then take over. Data is the topic I could harp about for a whole day or longer. A lot of people, including us, over time will find out, dang, we are missing certain structure in our data, certain alignment in our data, and I've got a whole slide on the data part, but data is really fundamental and foundational. The challenge with Gen AI is it will not usually tell you your data is bad. It will just make stuff up, and then you think, oh, wow, cool insights, but it's not grounded in any reality. So you need to be really careful there, and getting your data in order is not an easy task. That's not something you do overnight. It requires a lot of alignment, a lot of work between teams. Technology, don't look at it as there's one solution to solve them all. There's not the single hammer for every nail out there. Your AI solutions will likely be multiple different technologies, depending on the use case, depending what you want to achieve, depending where you need to integrate. Again, goes back to what Jeff announced today with Miro. I think an enormous opportunity to have a canvas which then integrates diverse technologies on the back end, but invisible to some extent from the actual user. So they don't need to worry, do I use Gemini, do I use Claude, do I use whatever it is, but really have one surface. And in my opinion, also helps to skill them up because they only learn one capability to interact with rather than like, I need to learn how to talk to this chatbot, I talk to this chatbot, because they actually all give you all the different results as well. And then organizationally, we talked about this, I think, today a lot around how culture is super important, how your organization might have to adjust in how you run pilots and how you adopt AI. And also making sure that in your organization you have champions, but also a structure how you actually get ideas in a pilot into production sustainable. And we spend quite a bit of time to do this in our world, in how we bring AI pilots to life and how we drive AI pilots into production. And I somewhat don't like really the term crawl, walk, run, but it's always a good comparison in our industry. And really, there is not a single moment where I say, this is the one use case you all should be after. It's different for everyone, but pick one out you well understand, where you have all the foundation, go with it, for example. And there will be different approaches, but it's good to experiment, and again, gives you a lot of opportunity. And now with AI, you can fast iterate as well. You don't waste weeks. You might waste hours, maybe a day, but you iterate super fast, for example. And then figure out how you support, for example, some of these AI initiatives. It might not be the old sort of support model you had in your organization. It might be new models, like earlier it was mentioned, where a designer suddenly may have to support their own application, which can be totally fine, but clearly they need to be geared up to this. You can't just drop them cold into, responsible production code. So there's certainly a learning phase. Some of us have lived through site reliable engineering, platform engineering, same concept now again, just with different people. And then how do you scale these pilots? A pilot is somewhat easy, but scaling this into production with proper life cycle is the hard part. And a lot of people are in the audience probably who deal with the supporting and production part. And there's nothing worse having to support something in production, which is a black box. You have no idea how it works and who to call if it breaks. So that's really key. Have a proper model how you support these use cases. And what are some of the 3 major areas where AI initiatives stall? One is clearly data. Everybody, we all heard this now for a long, long time. Data is the new oil. It really isn't. It's at best sludge. And the problem is, AI will not tell you. It will just polish it up a little bit. But it really is important. And that's something we spent a lot of time on, is building like a data foundation where we consolidate. We had over 2,000 data pipelines, for example, in our old data warehouse. We are down to 200 now. And same like, you probably stopped counting how many Google, Excel spreadsheets you have in each company. And it's mind-boggling to me. I always feel like some companies are just run on Google spreadsheets, and it's super crazy when you go to them and they're then, oh, everybody can edit the spreadsheet. That sounds like a really good idea. And then every team has decided to have different definitions for data, like, say, roles of buyer groups, who is an IT decision maker, who is a C-level executive. Every team might have a different definition. Now you need to bring this all together. So building the data foundation is a lot of work, takes a lot of thought, and that's probably the #1 reason why these AI initiatives often stall, because they hit a brick wall. You just can't get over this one. Then people, again, we talked about this. Technology is easy, people are hard, and you need to make sure to bring them along, and need to make sure you empower them, need to make sure they feel heard, need to make sure they understand also, you do ethical AI. That is really the third box, is like black box here. The challenge is, you want to understand why AI answered your question in a certain way, and how the answer was derived. And not all models are built equal. Not all models will tell you on what data they were trained, for example, what sources they have used, which is super important. The other part is, in production, for customer use, some of your customers will also ask, so what happens if the model tells me to put glue on my pizza and I really do it and I need to go to the hospital? Who is responsible for it? So there are vendors out there who, for example, will indemnify you against wrong answers from models, which is super important for some of the large customers, of course, to make sure that we have somebody who actually will stand up for the results and can verify the results as well. So here are a couple use cases. We will not touch on every single one in Red Hat, but I figured a couple interesting ones we can go through. Lucas and team did an awesome demo today already around AI-assisted coding, which I'm all for, but again, devil is in the details. Super helpful, super exciting, but you can also create a lot of legacy there. Then also looking at like, how can we use it for customer-facing interaction? How can you build stellar customer experiences using AI rather than just a chatbot? That's like almost yesterday's news. But how can you make it like a personalized, tailored experience to the customer with generated meaningful content for them rather than everybody still gets the same white paper? How we use it for customer experiences in our own briefing center, for example, workflow automation. Ethan talked a lot about prompting and then told you, well, don't type any prompt for more than 3 words. We did something similar for our account-based marketing teams to help them. They don't have to construct these super complicated prompts. But let's walk through a couple of them. So at the core of this is really, as we looked at how do we scale these AI pilots, we built out sort of 3 teams who help across the company to synthesize, scale, and execute AI pilots into production. We have like a velocity group, we have a combinator group, and we have a steering committee. And again, once you dive into the details, just running an AI pilot is the easy part. You need to go through security screening, PIAs, etc. Many of you are multinational companies. You need to worry about GDPR. You can't capture all of the information everywhere. Your InfoSec people get a heart attack if you grab, like, I don't know, dietary information from somebody in Europe, for example, where, yes, this is all fine in a sense. But again, the devil is in the detail. There's also an opportunity already to optimize workflows. We actually optimized through AI the whole process how PIA assessments are done. We currently, I believe, get I think it's 200 or whatever a month of PIA assessments. And in the past, it took excruciating time, weeks and months to get through it. Now we screen them through AI, and it automatically sends like other questions back to requester rather than like waiting for a human to interact. So we can accelerate this process quite a bit. Helps also get people along. And the other teams, for example, the Combinator program is looking at, are people trying to solve the same problem? Again, there's lots of people in every organization. Everybody has a great idea. Often, multiple people have the same idea. They just have never talked to each other. So this group is looking to synthesize use cases and really try to figure out where have we efficiency. I always say there are no new problems in our industry. There's just people who have met, and that's really what this group is looking at. And then the velocity team is really looking at, how can we accelerate? How can we identify use cases? How can we, for example, really speed up the path to production? And what are all the models to go into production? Not every AI use case needs to have the same foundation, same platform. Some of them are much lighter weight, and you can bring them in production much, much faster. But so where we started is, as I said, we spend a lot of time on data, people, and culture. So the good thing is for us, we had a great start on the culture side. We always were very collaboration-driven. We had really very little barriers across teams. Everybody has a voice in Red Hat, usually, for better or worse in some cases. We have a couple former Red Hatters here. They can tell you all the stories, how outspoken Red Hatters can be, which is good. We get called out very quickly if somebody feels something is wrong. But we also leaned in to have, like, for example, what we call days of learning, where we actually, every quarter, the entire company gets a day of learning where you pick a topic you would like to explore, and you spend all day on it learning about it. And then teams got together and, for example, did, hey, if you want to learn about AI, we've got a whole learning path for AI. If you want to learn about this. So getting people along and learning across organizations as well. For the data part, I have a slide in a minute what we've done here, and really also do the live by example, really from the top leadership down. Our top leadership, all our C-levels, actually locked themselves in a room for 3 days. Everybody was told, here, use Claude, use Gemini, build a self-sustaining business in 3 days. And not you, Jeff, as the technologist, get to build the UI. You actually need to build the business plan. And then, you marketing leader, you actually need to build the UI using Claude. So kind of reversing the roles. And the funny part is they all came out of this totally energized. Like, this is amazing. It was kind of funny to watch in a way, like, where were you the last 6 months? But it was great to see, and everybody in company like, oh, wow. And it then ended up, we actually then templatized this type of model where every group could execute a similar exercise within their own teams, maybe with different parameters. But it was kind of a fun exercise, and really not on the scary side where, oh, you can now run a whole company with one person and a chatbot. That wasn't really the goal of it. It was more like, look what you can do. You can literally build a functioning prototype in under 2 days, which looks like a real application. For the data architecture, we started probably over 2 years ago now on something we call the Dataverse. Nothing to do with Microsoft product. I learned there's a Microsoft product called Dataverse, totally not related. Sorry if anybody from Microsoft is here. But we really tried now to have all our data in the Dataverse, eliminate all these independent data sources, Google Sheets, data pipelines, etc. At the core of Dataverse, we also add MCP servers for all important data sources, so people don't naturally now need to use SQL queries or like ask for access to Snowflake or whatever. They just use MCP servers, and it also allows us to tap into data sources who have very brittle APIs, for example, in-house built stuff, or don't scale. MCP servers allow us there to do some smarter stuff here. But this has been very successful, and we keep expanding it and really help. There, actually, the team is using Miro, for example, to build their MCP agents. And all these MCP servers are actually hosted in a GitHub repo, which we actually plan to open source fairly soon as well. But the goal is, yes, they will be all in the GitHub repo, version controlled, automatically updated. So we also don't end up with this huge proliferation of 15 different versions of the same thing, for example. But it was really a great collaborative effort across the entire company, across all the data teams. And one outcome was, here's 2 examples where we actually had a major transition from an old version of Salesforce to a new version. And anybody who's done this, it's the least favorite thing you probably do in your life. It takes a long, long time, and you have a lot of paper cuts. And the problem is, we want to shut down the old instance, but we need access to the data. Just keeping the instance around for somebody who wants to look up customer information from like 3 years ago doesn't make sense. So now the data is in the dataverse. They can now interact with the data with natural language. Just ask like, hey, can you give me this data set, and it will produce the output. The nice thing is, it also gets rid of my favorite tool ever, Tableau dashboards. I don't know how many you have in your company. We did a study. We had over 9,000 Tableau dashboards. 85% of them have not been looked at less or more than probably a dozen times. So you could tell they're probably not used anymore. So it was a great way for us to actually eliminate the need for these custom dashboards, one-off dashboards, not only getting rid of the clutter, but also the time it takes to implement these one-offs is crazy. So building a Tableau dashboard, you don't do in a day. You need a data scientist gluing data together. It takes usually weeks, if not months. Now, we just give them access to the dataverse. They can query it and produce it. And then, there are ways where we also will build out dashboards for those who need it. For coding agents, we use all of the above, like everybody else, and they're good at certain things. Others are not so good as others. And it's great. We are leaning into this, but we are also very mindful where they make sense. As we do a lot of our development in open source communities, we are very mindful in how far we lean into AI-assisted coding when it comes to open source and the upstream communities. We work very closely with them to clearly help them to like, hey, there are opportunities to do this, but we are also labeling our code. If it's really generated by an AI code assistant, it is clearly labeled, this is done by an AI code assistant. Also, I think Lucas mentioned this earlier, when you use an AI code assistant, the fun part is, depending how you ask, it might actually write better code. So I told Lucas earlier, when you work with Claude Code and you say, do this, it actually gets really lazy and creates a lot of duplicated code. If you say, can you help me, it actually thinks about it a little bit longer and actually makes it much, much nicer and much better. However, the real problem here is, as much fun they are and as cool as they are and as productive you can be possibly, they can create a huge amount of technical debt if you don't put the guardrails in place. I think, Lucas, you mentioned around spec-driven development. That's absolutely a thing right now. And also providing guardrails like, what are the minimum version of libraries to use? What are some things you shouldn't do? If you just tell a code agent to do things, it has no idea about like, oh, I shouldn't use this old, log.js library or this Java thing, and suddenly you're riddled with like security flaws, security issues, and they're really hard to remove. And we've done studies early around where we see efficiencies, and we see about 20% in brownfield and more in greenfield. And way over time. So let me skip forward quickly with some collaboration stuff. So we've done the creative team. They were looking to collaborate around prompts for images. There is no tool today where they can easily collaborate in a team around image generation. So we gave them an app. Today it's a React app. And now after today's announcement, this could be easily moved into the Miro canvas through an MCP server, but they can now collaborate and riff on imaging prompts, for example, super easily. This is the other thing we've done around prompts for our account-based marketeers. They don't need to know how a prompt is being built. They just log into this portal, put in their names, give them the account list, They go what they want to achieve, building an account plan, deep dive into market research or whatever, execute this right out of the portal in Gemini, for example. So super easy to do. Again, another thing I saw today, well, this would be super easy now to bring into Miro as well, because they already use Miro for a lot of other their planning activities. And then the last one quickly is customer engagement. So that's something we've built actually thanks with Miro Professional Services. We actually built our own building in Boston. That's exactly the building we live in Boston. And it's our executive briefing center. And we built a Miro board for every customer who visits us, gets automatically created through a REST API, gets populated automatically. And then customers get it before the visit. They can post sticky notes around topics they want to discuss, etc. They use it during the visit and after the visit. And the board is shared with our product teams, marketing teams. They can do summarization, for example. They can run PRD experiments around it, down to product features. Like similar what Lucas and team demonstrated earlier, same concept here, but a wider lens in terms of really driven by customers. Has been super successful, really, really helpful. Just quickly, again, AI is super powerful, a lot of really opportunities there, but your AI strategy can't be 50 pages. It will be obsolete tomorrow. Really be concise, execute, pick one use case, start with one, execute it. And then really the opportunity is that all of this comes together in a single collaborative canvas like Miro, where now, as you have the ability to integrate all these technologies, there is a lot of really cool options here. And then also clear the path for people to embrace AI. Today you see probably a good number of people who now belittle output from AI. I was done with AI. Not a bad thing, but you need to bring them along and have them become believers rather than like, yeah, I don't need this, because otherwise it will just zoom by you. And really, it comes down to, do you want to transform or you will be transformed, basically. So with this, I think I'm at the end of my session, and somebody has given me the hook twice now. I should have warned everyone. Well, thank you very much. And actually, one last thing is, don't say thank you to the chatbots. One thing, it will not save you. That's very morbid. But you burn millions of dollars with the AI vendors. Like whenever you type thank you, it's a prompt, it starts thinking. So except if you want to put OpenAI, all the other vendors out of business, say thank you many times. Otherwise, not worth it. Don't be nice. They don't care. With this, I thank you very much. And only 1 more hour to go.